Alright, we are now arrived at the fact that we will be doing some lore on Shenhe. Thank you for voting. Let's go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty. Alright, so Shenhe is a very, very interesting character. I absolutely love just the lore that's behind her. So one of the things about her is she was born a human. She is not an actual adeptus of leeway. Although she is strong enough to compete with them and even outrival some of their power, she has supernatural strength. So one of the quotes that's just, you know, an introduction to her is, even though she was born in the human world, she ended up being an Adepti disciple. She grew up in the mountains far away from Liyue Harbor, and her soul was bound with red ropes. The red ropes are something that I believe Cloud Retainer gave her when she was young to contain her power, because without them she's too strong. But in doing this, it also trains Shenhe's body and mind. Now, even though she does have a very elegant temperament, she's very much shrouded in mystery. Not a lot is actually known about her, but I believe it was in the first event that we had for her, we discovered that Shenhe, when she was a very young child, her father, I believe, tried to have her sacrificed to a demon. He ends up dying to the demon, if I remember right, and Shenhe ends up fighting this demon in a cave for about a week before Cloud Retainer finds her, and she's winning. She's still a child at this point in time, and she's beating a demon. So it's like one of those things, you know, actually kind of crazy. So she is an Adepti disciple, even though she is a human. So she's been living a lot of her life in isolation in Liyue's mountains, and she's very distant. And she's actually can come across as quite a bit cold, but that's because she just doesn't know how to truly interact with other people, because she's never had to, really. So she was born to part of an exorcist clan, and for a time she did have a happy life as a child, and that's when her father tried to sacrifice her to a malevolent, okay, it was a malevolent god, not a demon, and her father did that to try to bring back his wife. So her father did not care about her whatsoever. He just wanted his wife back. You know, that's pretty screwed up, but you know, that's how lore be. That's what gets people interested. So Shenhe managed to defeat the remnants of the god herself as a child, and it scarred her for the rest of her life, and it led to her believing herself to be cursed. So she began to grow a homicidal tendency because of that. And that's why I say, like, her superhuman strength kind of comes into play. So the Adepti's attempts to contain it were by binding her with the red ropes, like I said, which was Cloud Retainer. And very interestingly, Cloud Retainer actually acts as Shenhe's mother, in a way. In fact, Cloud Retainer is actually quite motherly to all of her disciples. Despite Cloud Retainer genuinely, every time she gets saying that she's not at all motherly or whatever, she acts incredibly motherly. She is like the Ron Weasley of Adeptus. Not the Ron Weasley, Mrs. Weasley. She's the Mrs. Weasley of Adeptus. But anyway, so let's see, blah blah. So even though the red ropes do suppress Shenhe's homicidal tendencies, she still contemplates extremely violent means to kill other people, and she's very quick to anger, able to obliterate anything surrounding her when her emotions get too fierce. So, you know, when we see her, there's a Xinqiu who she believes that he's just threatening others, and she just acts hostilely towards him. And ultimately, though, she does wish to fit in as a human into other parts of society, into human societies. So she forms a lot of trust with the Traveler when she meets them. It's just one of those things, because the Traveler helps her feel calm, and she's at ease. So the Traveler just has a special aura about them. And that's one of the things about the Traveler. I really want to get into the Traveler's lore because as the main character, yes, there's something special, but there's a lot more to it than just that, of course. So, Shenhe does prefer speaking to very few people at a time. Again, she's very cold. She doesn't like being around other people, even though she wants to be around other people. It's like one of those. Flaws. I can't think of the word off the top of my head. It's not important. Anyway, so as a result of living with the Adepti, the Shenhe, or rather, many people worship her as one of them, even though she is not an Adeptus. She is just a disciple of them. And she even states that she is just an Adepti's disciple. But no matter what she does, no one really buys into it. They just treat her as an Adeptus, which she basically is. So the ways that she eats food is actually very interesting. She has a very limited diet, living secluded in the mountains, and because what Cloud Retainer and the other Adeptus eat, she eats very minimal amounts of food, normally being like herbs and flowers. She doesn't eat a lot of tasty things. So it's kind of like that. It's actually quite interesting because the small quantities of food that she eats is similar to how Albedo eats, as he does eat very small quantities of food. So Shenhe is a tall female, we know that. She's got silver white hair that's very long, and she's beautiful. She is a very beautiful character, just in every way that I can say. So what Cloud Retainer has to say about her is, one has traversed many realms and taken a great many pupils. Among them, Shenhe breaks the closest resemblance to oneself. Were she not immortal, one would like to have her stay by one's side. So as you can see, Cloud Retainer reveres her as very powerful. Really powerful is the right word. And reliable, honestly. Because if an Adeptus trusts a human that much, it means they have to be reliable and also just powerful in general. So Shenhe, like I said earlier, she comes from a family clan of exorcists. So I believe like Zhao. I believe Zhao is an exorcist, if I'm remembering his lore correctly, but I'll get to him later. So to Shenhe, Cloud Retainer is a very knowledgeable but chatty master. To Cloud Retainer, Shenhe stands out as special amongst the mortals she has instructed. So this not only implies that Cloud Retainer has instructed Shenhe, trained her, but has also trained others, which I think is quite interesting. So because if you think about Ganyu, Ganyu is one of the disciples of Cloud Retainer, but Ganyu is an Adeptus. She's half Adeptus, half human, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just one of those things. Very interesting part to mention in Shenhe's lore, because we actually learn quite a lot about Cloud Retainer through Shenhe. So yeah, living with an Adeptus as a human is not easy, but Shenhe is very unique and has almost unmeasurable willpower and a great talent for the arts of the Adeptus, which that's how she has gotten acknowledged by them. But even so, the long years of cultivation and the habit of eating what she eats, flowers, herbs, morning dew off of the leaves of grass, the blades of grass, it has made her more and more distant from earthly life, and she's been regarded as the mysterious white-haired Adeptus by other humans who have come in contact with her, even if it's by, a distance. So the occasional sharpness in her personality and the red ropes add to the mystery, and that's just one of the things. Now, she's not immortal, but some people view her that way because they see her as mysterious, and it's just like, there's a lot of things going on people don't know. So, let's see, okay, we've already gone over that. So, we're going to go over the character stories now, and here we are. So, character story number 1, this is what you unlock when you hit friendship level 2. Sometimes a few rumors will escape from Liyue's small community of pilgrims to make the rounds in the city's backstreets. And the tales often depict of someone being in a hopeless situation in some desperate place, and suddenly this white-haired adeptus comes to their rescue just in the nick of time. And these stories are like, they're almost like fairy tales. They're just really enchanting, and they just kind of stay there. They get ingrained into the culture a little bit, kind of like Red Riding Hood, or Goldilocks, Red Riding Hood, stuff like that. Hansel and Gretel, those kind of things that just, the fairy tale of them is just kind of ingrained in society over a long period of time. And if one were to ask the white-haired adeptus, fake adeptus, to tell the story, it would take a vastly different shape. Shenhe would say, "Some annoying creatures worm their way into the mountains from time to time. I simply get rid of them to prevent them from disturbing my master's meditations." And some people did wind up getting caught in the crossfire and injured. Well, it was their decision to come here. There isn't much I can do about that. So as you see, Shenhe takes a very logical, blunt approach with no attachment to the emotions of others, because the emotions of others do not affect what is happening around her necessarily. So, that's just part of her personality. It really kind of opens up how we view Shenhe, or how Shenhe can be viewed. She is a very strong person, as I said, and this is the type of mindset that certain strong people will have, where it's you base things out of logic and it comes across cold, because there's little regard to emotional feelings and attachment in that logic. But that's just, how Shenhe was raised as well. So the second character story that you get when you hit friendship level 3 with Shenhe is this. So Shenhe is the least accustomed to mortal life among anyone who takes on the adeptal appearance. So even though she's been in the mountains from a young age, she lacks experience or common sense, which, that's pretty natural. If that happened, then yeah, you probably should lack those things. And that makes it very difficult for other people to relate to her, and for her to relate to other people, of course. So to ordinary people, there are many solutions to a given problem. However, Shenhe, that's not the same thing. To Shenhe, it has to be the simplest and most direct solution, otherwise there is not a solution. And that's where you go back to that first character story, you actually do kind of see that in her answer, because it's a very simple, it's direct, and it's logical. It doesn't add in anything that's complex, it just keeps it down at the base, bare minimum of what needs to be done to accomplish a goal. And that really does describe Shenhe very well, in all honesty. So for example, Shenhe does not ever consider negotiation as a solution. Just ever. So she mostly resorts to threats instead. It's simple, it's effective. And she would say, a good solution. No. And again, that comes with just the aggressive personality of Shenhe in general. She's very aggressive, she's direct, she gets things done. And she's very strong about that. She's adamant. So you go further, so she's also spent time ruminating on problems that are truly esoteric. Now, you might not know what esoteric means, so we're going to do, I don't know what it means. So esoteric is a word meaning intended for or likely to be understood by only a small number of people with a specialized knowledge or interest. So, take that as you will. So, esoteric means it is intended to be understood by a small number of people with specialized knowledge. That's what the word means. Break it down, make it simple. So, for example, why do we need to pay for food? The answer, is there any difference between intimidating civilians and intimidating bandits? She truly believes that her master cloud retainer is brilliant and eloquent at conversation. That's Cloud Retainer is very unique with how one speaks, but one must speak as one learned to speak, if I may say. In a certain sense, Shenhe can be considered very pure, or rather, actually no, you can consider Shenhe pure even though she's very aggressive, just in general. Much like a child, she relies on chaotic, straightforward intuition and logic to get her through life. So Mountain Shaper had this to say about her. Little Shenhe is not only stronger than most, she possesses a unique character. She knows not the world, she understands not common sense, distinguishes few cuisines, and acknowledges no hierarchies. It may not be such an easy thing for Cloud Retainer to tutor her. And that's actually a very important line, because the other Adeptus, thanks to Cloud Retainer taking her on as a disciple, get to learn about her in their own way. And they can now start criticizing Cloud Retainer and also Shenhe in their own unique ways. But this isn't really bad criticism. This is just more of observation, or what they think. And it's actually quite interesting and very accurate. So Mountain Shaper is very accurate with everything that he said to her, except I don't think that it's difficult for Cloud Retainer to tutor her, as Cloud Retainer has quite a number of disciples, if we're being quite honest, which we learn about that in other bits of lore from other characters, which, again, I love Cloud Retainer. Cloud Retainer is one of my favorite Adeptus. That's not a playable character, of course. Otherwise, we're talking about Ganyu. I'm in love with Ganyu. She is like the icing on the cake. She is the strawberry that you first pick in the springtime. She is the taste of blueberries and sweet things. And also Carolina Reapers. She's got that spice to her, and she can make somebody crap out their guts, because she's that strong. Anyway, so this is the third character story that you get to unlock, and this one's at Friendship Level 4, as well as doing the side quest, The Crane Returns on the Wind. So, as we already know about Liyue, there's a lot of folk tales. It's a very old country. So, fairy tales, stories, they've all been engraved in that culture for just millennia. So, among these that concern relative nobodies, whom an Adeptus took under their wing, I'm sorry, I read that completely wrong. Liyue has no lack of folktales about meetings with the Adepti, and many of these concern relative nobodies whom an Adeptus took under their wing, thus elevating them greatly. However, in circumstances under which Shenhe's fate became tied to the adeptal abodes, it's not the same thing. It's not like that. If anything, it's actually anguish. So, when Shenhe was 5, her mother passed away, and her father did not care for Shenhe at all. In fact, her father loved his wife who had died so much, he couldn't bear the agony. And eventually that agony turned into resentment, and he hated Shenhe because her mother gave birth to her. So he essentially blamed Shenhe for his wife dying, for her mother dying. He blamed the child. And he got more and more insane as time moved forward, and eventually he left her, just outright left the village, and he wasn't able to sleep anymore, and he was searching for a way to bring his wife back to life. But as we all know, you need a necromancer to do that. He didn't find a necromancer, but he did return when he found something. And he returned joyous, but in a frenzy. And Shenhe's father had brought with him a secret art known as Fate Transference, which is a ritual sacrifice to the Seelie that are summoned by this art. A living person's body can be exchanged for a dead one's. And what he wanted to do was use Shenhe's body. And Shenhe was unaware of what was about to happen. She was just a normal child at this point. And she was joyous that her father came back, even though her father despised her, essentially. And he had claimed that he had a surprise for her in a cave in the mountains, far from the village, far from people. She was so happy. She was just thrilled at this. And this next bit in her life would scar her forever. It would be traumatizing. Her father summoned a hideous black Seelie in that cave, and its blood-red eyes craving her delectable life force. Shenhe was stupefied. She didn't know where it came from. She didn't know what it wanted at all. And crises often paralyze people. One thought, though, was in Shenhe's mind. All she could think was, this creature wants to eat me, and I don't want to die, I want to live. So what Shenhe does is she grips her mother's keepsake, which is an exorcism dagger. Again, she comes from a village of exorcists. So she has an exorcist dagger, and she faces the Seelie. She's trembling, but she's ready to fight. Several days later, Cloud Retainer follows this trail of great evil and eventually investigates the cave, only to find Shenhe collapsed inside, famished, thirsty, barely alive. Barely alive. She had been fighting for her life against this demon Seelie. And Cloud Retainer takes pity on Shenhe, but also sees that Shenhe has amazing talent, because this child at about 6 years of age has repelled a terrifying demon on her own, demon god. And so Cloud Retainer brings her back, heals her, and takes her on as a disciple and starts instructing her from that moment forward. If Cloud Retainer had not done that, Shenhe would have died. And if something else had happened that had caused Shenhe to still survive, Shenhe wouldn't be the same person. She would probably be a broken spirit, and possibly even a malevolent one who just knows not what to do. If I remember right, this actually continues, basically. So, the fourth character story you get at Friendship Level 5, after having finished The Crane Returns on the Wind, follows as such. So, even after this, even the most diffident heart, cooled from living and training in the mountains for over a decade, might sometimes experiences some weirdness in their behaviors. It's like that with Shenhe. On impulses, she can come down from the mountain one night and return to what was once her home. Shenhe did not know how she felt about her home nor her family. She was merely driven by some nebulous desire to live in the house that she used to live in, see what happened to her father, and she became lost in this obsession. So she learned that from neighbors that he had passed away several years ago when she had gotten there. And her childhood home had also been demolished by pawnbrokers, thugs, just, scavengers, basically. And all the traces of her memories vanished. She didn't care about the attention that she was getting. She didn't answer a single question asked by other people nearby. She just stood there and she listened to the howls that swept through the depths of her heart. The emotions. Was it hatred? Was it fear? Was it relief? What was it? What was the feeling she had? It was kind of everything. It was the feeling of betrayal, the feeling of just sadness, remorse, but also anger and fury. It just kind of burned inside of Shenhe thinking about this as she returns to her childhood home. And it's just not easy to feel something like that. Shenhe, being the extremely strong person that she is, it's great and all, but it comes at a cost. Usually, to grow stronger, you have to take on pain. Pain is one of those things that is universal. You can deal with it in any number of ways, but your experience with pain in one moment in time will determine just how bad your next experience with pain will be. And that's a life lesson. And it's from pain that we learn to grow and take on pain that next time, that it will inevitably happen. God forbid it doesn't, but we all know that we're going to feel pain again at some point in time. And it's how we deal with any moment in time that we feel pain, how we deal with that pain, again, determines how we do it next time. Sorry for being autistic. I need to continue with lore. So, there we are. So it's all there, and no, she stood there a long time, just thinking, just being lost in her thoughts, and she just left, silently. She was slow to leave, though, but she didn't look back. She didn't turn around. She just watched as she walked away. Well, she didn't watch as she walked away because she didn't turn around, but she walked away, silently, slowly. It's there. This continues on again with the 5th character story that you unlock at the next level after having done the quest I previously mentioned. So, Liyue has its own fortune telling. It's similar to astrology. We'll get to Mona's lore later. But, so of these kind of fortune tellings that happen in Liyue, there are 2 fates that people seek to avoid at all cost. So one of the things that Liyueans avoid is solitary star, which is a type of fortune telling that dictates one will be separated from friends and family, cursed to basically be alone for the rest of their life. That's definitely one you'd want to avoid. You don't want solitary confinement. The other one that all Liyueans try to avoid at any cost is disastrous evil, which simply means that you will face many hardships and perils. So when the Adepti rescued Shenhe, Mooncarver read her fortune one time, and this is pretty much what he had to say word for word. The signs showed that she was marked by both the solitary star and disastrous evil, and that she was also plagued by intense homicidal urges. She was thus a person of supremely ominous destiny, doomed to harm herself and others. So, this is when she was given the red ropes, after Mooncarver read her fortune, because Cloud Retainer and the others decided she might be too dangerous without them, because it would bound her and keep her emotions intact. It would keep her power from running rampant. So, to, help not harm people, they bound her soul with the red ropes, which you see in her hair. So this binding had the effect of both restraining her evil fate and her violent tendencies. The downside to it, though, is it shackled emotions that originally were belonging to a human. So it's essentially because of that red rope that bounds her that it kind of adds to her character, but also takes away from her character. It's like a double-edged sword, in a sense. So ever since she got the red ropes, Shenhe had become more and more disaffected by trivial matters. They didn't matter to her whatsoever. Why would they? Why should they? And even things that most people would consider very important in life mean nothing to Shenhe. Owning a house, Shenhe couldn't care less. Learn to live on your own, be strong, that kind of thing. So that's when she becomes less and less human, and that's why she's seen more as an adeptus, even though she is truly a human. is because she doesn't act like a human. She was never really given a chance to grow up as a human, and because of those red ropes, it really prevented her from doing that, because it would be dangerous for her to act as her human self would, because her human self might accidentally hurt a lot of people, even though it would just be because of the traumatic events that she experienced as a child. She is an extremely tragic character, in all honesty. So, this is when we set in motion, she meets the Traveler. When she meets the Traveler, something stirs within her. There's dormant emotions coming back to her. These emotions, they're strange to her. She doesn't remember feeling these emotions. She's not used to them. And they come loose at once from the depths of the Fates tableau. Maybe it was, like Mooncarver said, that heaven might dictate fates, but destiny's tale is written by mortals. The tale of Shenhe and the mortal world had not yet ended. It's a very extremely important part of Shenhe's lore right there, is that he's basically saying, even though I read her fortune, it's not set in stone that this is true, that it will happen. So destiny is not bound by fate, fate is not bound by destiny, even though the two are almost parallel with each other, meaning nearly the same thing. So the next thing that we get is the White Jade Comb, which you get at Friendship Level 4 after you do the side quest. So, once upon a time, Shenhe actually did have black hair. Fun fact. She was first brought to Mount Hulao. She wouldn't say a word. She refused to speak. The only thing she was willing to do was climb the mountain and watch the clouds. That's all she would do. Though, when she got tired, she would sleep. She would drink the dew off of the blades of grass, off of the leaves of trees, from the mountains when she was thirsty. And she would eat flowers, normally Qingxin when hungry. Cloud Retainer took this in, made note of it, but Cloud Retainer did not disturb Shenhe. Instead, Cloud Retainer made a comb of white jade from a sacred stone and gave it to Shenhe. And Cloud Retainer said if she wished to sever her ties with the mortal world and enter the adeptal tutelage, that she should brush her hair thrice with this comb, and it would be counted as a rite of apprenticeship. Shenhe did exactly that, without any hesitation. And as she did, something strange happened. As the comb brushed through Shenhe's hair, a layer of black locks turned to silver from root to tip. The second brush, half of her hair remained dark. When she took the third brush, all of her hair went to that silver color, that beautiful, unnatural silver that becomes natural because Adeptus magic, you know how that works. So today, Shenhe still wears the comb on her person as a symbol of the connection to the Adeptus. That's also her way of saying thanks, in a sense, because the Adeptus, Cloud Retainer specifically, did actually save her. So, it is really one of those things where it's a symbol of appreciation and connection at the same time. Through years of training, Shenhe has come to understand the meaning behind the 3 brushstrokes. The first is to uproot useless anxiety. The second brush was to forsake joy and sorrow. But the third brush was to walk this path into old age without regret. And doing that at such a young age as Shenhe did really is staggering when you look at it, because that takes so much willpower to be able to do. and understand why you're doing it. And we can believe that Shenhe did understand that, even though she was going through so many emotions at the time. But, it be what it be. So this is how Shenhe receives her vision. So few people know how Shenhe intended, or how Shenhe had been able to stand against the monster for days and nights by herself. So we all know she fought a demon at a young age. This is how she did it. Shenhe was born into an exorcist family, as we all know. Her father went mad and had not taught her anything about exorcism. He took a year-long break from her, went off into the distance, and came back with a dirty plan to kill his daughter to get his wife back from the dead. And, as many children at that innocent age, Shenhe was wholly unused to facing perils in life, much less face them alone. So, in the cave, without protection, betrayed by her father, Shenhe underwent a metamorphosis. Just as Mooncarver's readings had shown, the sleeping, calamitous fates, violent urges, an unyielding spirit within Shenhe broke their bonds all at once, at the same time. Those things served as a shield and an invisible blade, and it armed her frail form. They gave her strength. It gave her something to attack with, and she attacked the creature before her to swear to tear it to shreds, to prove that Shenhe was the cruelest evil that stalked the darkness. The life and death battle across the next few days went with no end. They swapped places in a stalemate. Sometimes Shenhe was winning, sometimes the demon was winning. They kept flip-flopping back and forth. It was horrifying. As the shadow of death loomed upon Shenhe, the gods and Celestia looked upon Shenhe with favor. The bright crystalline object fell into Shenhe's hands, and the balance of that battle tipped irrevocably in Shenhe's favor, and she won the fight. She won the fight and destroyed it. The icy light that pierced through the dark like sky glow showed the path to the future. In the past, that light had guided Shenhe from her fate. In the future, it would lead her back to the mortal realm. So again, that's extremely, extremely important to Shenhe, because she got it because she stood her ground as a child and fought a demon. That's what you call power right there. You don't back down. You don't give up. You fight until the end. No matter what happens, no matter what peril you're going through. That's Shenhe. And I absolutely love it. Absolutely beautiful. There's a lot of other events that Shenhe has been in, which we'll go over in another video. So we have the fleeting colors in flight, which includes sky gazers, landwalkers, the stars inscribe the year's wishes, of drink a dreaming, and the exquisite night chimes. There's a couple of other web events that she's appeared in as well, which we'll go over later, not in this video though. So there are mentions of Shenhe as well. So what Chong Yun has to say about Shenhe is, end quote, "The elders in my clan have mentioned her before. The fate of her family, it's something we can all sympathize with. I originally thought we would be able to bring back a long-lost relative back into our clan. The elders were overjoyed when they heard she was alive. They even prepared gifts for her and picked an auspicious day for a grand reunion. What we hadn't counted on was that most of the time Shenhe is extremely difficult to track down. Wait a minute, based on our relative positions in the family tree, does that mean there's no way I'd have to call her Auntie Shenhe, right? So this is actually saying that Chong Yun's family was part of the clan that Shenhe had been raised in originally. And Shenhe is much older than Chong Yun, if I'm not mistaken, and that makes them related. That's something new I didn't know. Fun fact. So what Ganyu has to say about Shenhe is, I actually don't know her all that well. I've only heard bits and pieces from Cloud Retainer. From what I've heard, she can be quite ferocious. Whenever her temper gets the better of her, she is likely to start obliterating her surroundings. I wonder if she's just bored. Should I recommend some work to keep her occupied? So this is a very interesting part, saying that Cloud Retainer doesn't speak very often about Shenhe, despite practically being her mother. Which is also interesting as well, because Cloud Retainer is Ganyu's master, if I'm not mistaken. So the two being trained by the same Adeptus, but Ganyu knowing very little about Shenhe does say a lot. Shenhe does not like to be around other people. Very interesting. Hu Tao has this to say. She is quite fascinating, completely different from anyone else I've ever encountered. Do you think if I started eating divine herbs and drinking the dew of mountains every single day, I'd be able to look as pure and pristine as she does? I don't know much about Hu Tao, but that's actually a very cute line. I really like that. But Hu Tao is completely correct in each sentence. Ningguang has this to say. How is Miss Shenhe doing as of late? Please look out for her whenever you can. I am most grateful to both of you, Paimon and the Traveler, for your assistance with rebuilding the Jade Chamber. Well, Paimon, Shenhe, and the Traveler. As I do remember that quest now. And on a more personal note, please know that if you are ever free, a cup of the finest tea will always be waiting for you here. What Zhao has to say about Shenhe is, it seems Shenhe places a great deal of trust in you. Well, how could she not? There are few people in the world as kind and as good-natured as you. So, he's just observing. Xingqi has this to say. I find that Miss Shenhe seems to look at me somewhat fiercely, so I daren't approach her lightly. Bizarre. Did I inadvertently upset her? Or maybe upset someone close to her? And this is just a thing. Xingqi does not understand how Shenhe really thinks. And she considers most people to just be a threat. So, she's very defensive-minded. Yao Yao has two different things to say. So, regarding the released favorite food, one time, Shenhe ate too many chingsin in one go, and she was sick for days. And that's why I've got to take care of myself and not eat raw chingsin. How do I know about that? Auntie Cloud Retainer told me. I didn't know Yao Yao was an Adepti. That's cool. That's awesome. And then about Shenhe specifically. Shenhe's been away from the human world for years and years. It's no wonder that she's still adjusting to life in Liyue Harbor. I'd love to help Ganyu take care of her, but how do I ask her in a way that won't make her feel uncomfortable? So that actually says more about Yao Yao than it does about Shenhe. More Yao Yao's character is to be helpful and be very polite and nice to others, which I like that. I love that a lot. And now one of my favorite characters, Yunjin, has this to say. I've long since known the divine damsel of devastation, inside out, back to front, but it was only very recently that I learned the divine damsel in question is actually a real person. Life is full of strange twists sometimes. My only hope is that she can find true friendship and never be lonely again. And that's probably the biggest thing that's plagued Shenhe from her birth, essentially. From about 5-6 years old, she's been alone. she hasn't had anyone except pretty much Cloud Retainer, and only more recently having met the Traveler and a select few other people. Yunjin also being her friend. And Yunjin, if you do know what the Divine Damsel of Devastation is, it's a tale done in opera format being sung. It's a song that speaks about Shenhe's tragic tale, her upbringing, how her father was devastated by the death of his wife. He blamed the child for the mother's death and tried to sacrifice the child to bring the mother back to life. It was a mistake. The child ends up destroying the demon in the end, and from there the story continues. It's very, very tragic. There's not anything else to say. So here's a little bit of trivia, which, by the way, link is in the description below if you want to see where I'm getting my source, the information from. So the English version refers to Shenhe's murderous tendencies as homicidal. However, in the Chinese translation, it refers more broadly to a murderous intent towards oneself as well as others. This is clarified in her 5th story. So Shenhe's hair changing from black to white, taken to mean combing away worries, is ironic, in the sense that usually the early onset of white hair means that one is full of worries. So this irony is also highlighted in her name card's description. Chongyun refers to Shenhe as his aunt, based on their voiceovers. They are, in fact, blood-related and hail from the same clan, although the English translation does not indicate which side of the family they are related by. In the Chinese translation, Chongyun calls Shenhe, I don't know how to pronounce that word, or read it, but whatever that word is, it specifically refers to aunt, as the youngest sister or the youngest female cousin of the speaker's mother. So in this case, this would be the youngest sister of Chongyun's mother, which would mean that Shenhe is Chongyun's maternal aunt. Shenhe is not mentioned to have any siblings, meaning that she is likely one of the cousins of Chongyun's mother. According to records of a changing village, a branch family of exorcists used to live in the east of the village. However, the mother would die of illness, the young daughter would go missing, and shortly after, the father would hang himself on a tree in the yard of his own house. The young daughter of this family is implied to be Shenhe. Although Shenhe's stories clearly state that she did not learn any exorcist arts from her family, she is able to use techniques that are similar to exorcism. Chongyun refers to Shenhe as an adept exorcist upon witnessing her abilities. Although there's no clear explanation, it's possible that the adeptal arts that are taught by Cloud Retainer to Shenhe are related to exorcist techniques. And in fact, the former might have descended from the latter, the way that I put it. So Shenhe is seen wearing the Calamity Queller in her official art, and Shenhe is, in fact, one of the 4 5-star characters who have not yet received a story quest, the other being Keiqing, Chi-Chi, and Wanderer. Out of the 4, Shenhe and the Wanderer are the only event-exclusive characters. Shenhe is known by these aliases or titles, the Divine Damsel of Devastation. In the etymology, Shenhe means immortal crane, using an old meaning of the word, I can't read that. In the past, the word, I can't read that, but it's pronounced Shen, meant immortal. Okay, Shen, that's what it means. So Shen, in the old meaning, means immortal. In the sense of Taoist, Xian, also known as Chinese immortals, whom the Adepti are modeled after. However, the word Shen now has replaced it to describe divinity, while Shen no longer has a standalone meaning. The use of it, oh my gosh, reading this is kind of weird because I'm reading like a different language while also reading English, and I don't know the other language at all. Her name could be a play on her being close to the Adepti, but not actually being an Adeptus herself. It may also be intended to be a synonym for word I can't read, meaning crane of immortals. So, a poetic name for the red-crowned crane in Mandarin. The red-crowned crane is regarded as one of the most beautiful and sacred birds in Chinese culture, and is considered to be a riding animal of immortals, I mean. Yes, I'm reading that right, okay. The red accent color of Shenhe's attire is, or could be, inspired by the color pattern of that crane. Another thing is, Shenhe's constellation in Chinese translates to scattering of worries, which contains the play of words comb and scatter, which are found in her name card's description. All extremely interesting stuff. So, there you have it. There we have some Shenhe lore. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching it. There is a lot more to go over, but we will be doing that in another video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked it, please leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe if you want to see videos similar to this one. And I will see all of you in the next video that we do. Take care, everybody. Whew, man, I need some water after that. I'll tell you what. Hello? Oh, that's where that is.